if you have any questions, please feel free to unmute yourselves and ask. Please use the raise hand feature of Zoom in order to maintain the queue. Also, if you are not speaking, please mute yourselves in order to minimize the disturbances. Thank you.
Recording in progress.
Om yogena chittasya padena vacham malam sarirasya ch vaidhigena yopakurotam pravaram muninam padanjalim pranjaliranatosmi stuve padanjalim vyasam shankaram cha munitrayam kartra sutrasya bhashyasya kramad vivaranasya cha. We are coming to the end of the Samadhipada, and after this we will start Kaivalyapada, the 4th chapter, which will take only just a few sessions. So I shall try to finish the last sutra of Samadhipada. Tasyapi nirodhe sarva nirodhat nirbija samadhi. So this is the ultimate goal of yoga, nirbija samadhi. Yoga chitta vritti nirodha. So Vyasa's commentary is very revealing, so I shall just give an outline of it. The essence is that the simple implication is that the Samprajñata Samadhi also creates some samskaras, some vrittis, which have to be transcended, which have to be removed to achieve the highest goal of yoga, that is Nirbija Samadhi, that is the seatless Samadhi. So that is the implication. So the sutra is Tasya Api Nirodhe Sarva Nirodhat Nirbija Samadhi. Tasya here means, Samprajñata Yogasya in that sense. So, even this Samprajñata Samadhi has to be transcended, should be subjected to Nirodha. And when we transcend, when we go beyond this Samprajñata Samadhi, then only we will be able to achieve the final fundamental purpose of yoga, that is Nirbija Samadhi. Sana kevalam samadhi prajna virodhi prajna krudanam samskaranam abhi pradibandhi bhavati. So Vyasa says, this Nirbija Samadhi, it not only neutralizes all samskaras, but it also neutralizes the samskaras created or samskaras attended on Ritambhara Prajna that we already discussed earlier. So we discussed this last time. Ritambhara Prajna also can create some samskaras, and those samskaras are to be transcended. Kasma nirodhaja samskaraha samadhija samskara badhati iti. So this nirodha samskara, nirbija samskaras, its effect will completely neutralize all other samskaras, and eventually all samskaras will be completely neutralized. Nirodha sthiti kala kramanubhavena nirodha chitta krita samskarastittam anumeyam. So how do we understand this particular state when we observe the time that we experience, the experience of going beyond mind, beyond samskaras? From that we can infer this state of Nirbija Samadhi. And then Vithana Nirodha Samadhija Prabhavaihi Saha Kaivalya Bhagiyaihi Samskaraihi Chittam Swasya Atma Pragudo Avasthidayam Praviriyate. So the essence is, when we transcend all samskaras, including the samskaras created by Samprajnata Yoga or Utambhara Prajna, this higher intuitive wisdom, when we transcend that samskaras also, then we reach a state which is called Manolaya in Vedanta, going beyond mind. Going beyond mind means all these will get completely observed in Prakriti, devoid of Trigunas. If you can transcend the fluctuations caused by Tamoguna, Rajoguna and Sattoguna, if we can actually remain unaffected by the interplay of these three gunas, these three fundamental characteristics of mind and Prakriti, that is Sattoguna, Rajoguna and Tamoguna. When we reach the state when we go beyond these gunas, we go beyond mind. Now, this is the state, the ultimate state according to yoga. So, we have given an outline. I mean, yoga aims at taking us beyond our own mind. Yoga teaches us how to transcend our own mind. Now, after this, I want to take a very important subject. Before we take to the next sutra, maybe as part of interpretation of the next sutra, that is Kaivalyapada. So the first sutra in Kaivalyapada is this one. That is Janma Aushadha Mantra Tapa Samadhiyaha Siddhaya. He's talking about siddhis. And remember, we have many people ask this question, and I have found this in the internet, those who are listening to lectures, these Yoga Sutra classes from different places, they ask one question, they frequently ask one question, the connection of the relationship between yoga and Vedanta. And there are others who point out that we give more importance to Vedanta and we do not consider yoga itself as the ultimate. So there are some, I believe, in my opinion, I believe most of them are very sincere practitioners of Hatha Yoga or physical yoga. So I want to make that point very clear before we take up this subject. In fact, we have to remember, yoga system of philosophy is essentially a system of dualism. And Vedanta accepts yoga as part of what is called Samana Siddhanta, means it has agreement with yoga philosophy and all the details to a remarkable extent. Vedanta agrees with yoga. For example, the importance of yamas and niyamas are already included in the 4 fundamental qualifications recommended for all Vedanta students. That is sadhana, chadushtaya sampatti. There is no doubt about it. Yama, niyama, asana, pranayama, when all these mentioned, yamas and niyamas are taken to be the essence of the fundamental qualifications for studying Vedanta. And not only that, a large number of Vedantins have been practitioners of yoga, including Patanjali yoga system. They also have implied in many of the writings of their own experiences of this Nirbija Samadhi. But at the same time, Vedanta will argue that yoga is not the ultimate or the highest reach of spiritual, mystical experience. That is an important point. Remember, yoga is certainly very helpful. Yoga takes you very close to the highest degree of fitness, the highest qualifications for practicing and learning and understanding Vedanta. But yoga itself is not the highest state. This idea is very graphically described, not in any of the traditional Vedanta textbooks, but maybe in this book which is considered to be the most profound devotional philosophical classic in Hindu Vedanta tradition, that is Bhagavata Purana. So Bhagavata Purana contains many important ideas which reveal the essence of many systems of philosophy. Of course, the text deals with the story of Lord Krishna's incarnations, and remember, Bhagavata Purana is also considered to be highly Vedantic. There are many versions, many verses and ideas in the Bhagavata Purana which are very profoundly Advaitic in structure and meaning and implications. In this book, there are just a few, but I have selected the most important one. If those of you have got the text, you can read. It is called Ekadasha Skandha, means the 11th book of Bhagavata Purana. 28th chapter of the 11th book. You have to remember, Bhagavata Purana contains more than 18,000 verses. More than 18,000 verses. A very big book. And it has got 11 books or 11 sections or 11 skandhas. Skandha is the name used in Sanskrit, Skandha, skandha means book. So in the 11th skandha or 11th book, we call 11th section in some translations, there is one important part. Lord Krishna is giving a set of instructions, a series of instructions to his most beloved disciple, student, and the student name is Uddhava. I mean, there was a big catastrophe in that country, whole population perished. I'm not going to those details, that will take us to many underlying stories, which there is no time. And when all this happened, Lord Krishna advised his most wonderful, most highly evolved devotee to leave everything behind and go to Himalayas and to do tapasya, penance and meditation in the Himalayas. To be more specific, in that place called Badrika Ashrama, which is close to Indo-China border in today's geographical location. And there, Uddhava was instructed to go and spend his time in meditation and yoga practice. In the midst of these instructions, Lord Krishna gives many philosophical ideas. He also instructs Uddhava how to do rituals, meditation, puja, worship, and so on. But there is one section to the end of the 28th chapter in which he is instructing Jnana Yoga. At the end of Jnana Yoga, he also gives a brief reference to yoga philosophy that we are discussing now. The verse is this: Yoga dharanaya kamsit asanai dharananyutehi tapo mantraushadhai kamsit upasargan vinirdahed. You know, tapo mantraushadhai kamsit. The idea is you can practice different disciplines, and you can practice this tapa. Tapa means penance. You can practice mantras, mantra japa, taking holy names. You can also practice meditation, and so you can practice certain disciplines involving herbal medicines. Actually, it is mentioned, it is implied in this first sutra of Kaivalyapada, the 4th chapter. See, the first sutra of Kaivalyapada is Janma Aushadha Mantra Tapa Samadhijaha Siddhayaha. The meaning is this: uh, how a yogi is trying to achieve great things in his spiritual practice, including strong, healthy body, long life, and many such adjacent achievements. Well, there is a description. Janma means there are some characteristics and qualities that we are born with. Certain, for example, certain birds, certain creatures they can fly very high, and they can withstand extreme heat and cold. And there are also certain human beings who are born with some special characteristics. So these are some of the siddhis, some of the higher skills. How do you translate the word siddhi into English? Remember, there is nothing occult or miraculous about this particular word. In yoga tradition, siddhi or these skills, special characteristics, special powers are the results of certain disciplines that you practice with your mind, with your life, with your values. As a result of this, you achieve some special skills. You can achieve these skills at the physical level, intellectual level, at the emotional level, and so on. But some of the skills are inborn skills, as I mentioned just now. Some advanced spiritual seekers may be born with certain unique characteristics and skills. Some animals, birds, and different creatures have got their own special inherited skills, inborn skills, which human beings do not have. So that is an example of Janma Siddhi. So remember, those who have got the sutra in front of in your text, we can see the first sutra of Kaivalyapada. Janma Siddhi, that is one. Second one is Aushadha Siddhi. Certain skills, certain characteristics, certain unique skills that you may develop by taking certain medicines. So there are views in ancient India. For example, they believed that you can strengthen your body. You can prolong your lifespan by taking some herbal medicines, by taking certain medicines either taken from nature or by process by yourself. There is one important verse that you find in an old textbook, that is an Indian philosophy book. It actually mentions that. The book is called Sarva Darshana Sangraha. The book is a digest of the essence of the fundamental teachings of different systems of Indian philosophy. That book is called Sarva Darshana Sangraha. The verse is Saddarsane api muktistu darshida pindavadane karamalagavad sabi pratiksha nopalabhyadi tasmatam rakshayet pindam rasaschaiva rasayanehi. The idea is that they believed that certain chemicals or certain things like mercury or sulfur can be used to manufacture certain special medicines which can be used, and certain herbs procured from nature, obtained from nature, can be used to produce medicines that prolong your life, that help you to live a very long time. These are some of the examples given here. So this is an example of the second category of skills mentioned by Patanjali, that is Aushadha Siddhi. So Janma Siddhi means special skills or special achievements. which are inborn. Aushadha means medicine. Aushadha Siddhi means certain special skills that you develop by taking certain medicines. Most of them deal with physical achievements. That's an important thing. This Rasayana school of medical specialists in ancient times, they believed in the efficacy of certain chemicals. You can find this in many of the ancient textbooks on Ayurveda or Indian school of medicine. The third category that Patanjali mentions is mantra siddhi. For example, certain skills that you develop as a result of chanting, reciting some mantras. And what are the skills normally associated with chanting some hymns? This you find in all religious traditions. But here, Patanjali is not talking about religion. That is an important line of demarcation. Patanjali is talking, that's why there is nothing mystical about what Patanjali talks about here. What he says is, if you repeat certain verbal symbols, then your mind automatically develops certain skills. That's what he's talking about. That is mantra siddhi. Then tapo siddhi. Certain great saints in ancient times, they achieved power of mind, certain ability to focus and concentrate, read and understand by chanting, by mantras, and also by practicing concentration, taposiddhi. And then there is an called samadhi, that is kayendriya siddhi, that means special skills of body and indriyas. Remember, all these are skills at the physical level mostly. So why Patanjali begins Kaivalya Pada with this? This is a purpose. When you read the third sutra of Kaivalya Pada, you will understand. What Patanjali is talking about is interesting. First he gives a list of these skills which are not especially spiritual, but can be understood in a very, very ordinary physical sense. And then in the next sutra is Jatendra Parinamaha Pragurtya Purat. So what it means is some of these skills maybe, as you may know, as you mentioned, you can get by birth, by taking medicines, by concentration, maybe by practicing certain spiritual disciplines involving mantras. You can find this happening in all religious traditions. They go on chanting certain sacred word symbols. In temples they do, in churches they do, in all traditions, in synagogues they do, in Buddhist traditions they do, all traditions you find. Hinduism, of course. Certain word symbols are chanted again and again. They believe by chanting they get peace of mind, or maybe some other special skills they get. Now what it means is, when they get these skills, what happens is, you are only removing the obstacles that stand in the way of your developing these skills. That should be understood in the light of the next sutra. All these skills are essentially inherent in all of us, but they don't manifest. A person is capable of achieving great peace of mind, but right now he is highly confused or deluded, or he's suffering from conflicts. He sits there for some time reading a book or chanting some sacred hymns, and he gets peace of mind. Now, according to Patanjali, his practice doesn't produce peace of mind. His practice only removes obstacles that stand in the way of peace. So when the obstacle to peace are removed, peace which is already there self-manifests. This will be made clear in the next sutra. To give an idea of this, for example, a farmer, he wants to irrigate the field. This is from the third sutra. A farmer is trying to irrigate the field. And he has to bring water from the nearby stream. Maybe there is 100 meter to 500 meter distance from the stream to the field which he wants to irrigate. And he wants to cut a canal. So Patanjali will tell you that you are not actually making a canal to bring water from the stream. Rather, you are only removing the earth from that part of the earth, the soil. You are removing the soil from that part of the earth. And when the soil is removed, the result is a canal. And from the stream, the water flows into the canal. Similarly, a student who studies, let us say, painting, is interested, but he is not trained. When he undergoes training, we know what happens. His natural skill with his part of his system want to manifest, but there is an obstacle. The obstacle is he is not trained. So he removes that obstacle by undergoing training in painting, and he becomes a painter. You have a huge granite block in front of you. You want to make a statue of Buddha from that granite block. How do you do that? You remove, if you are a sculptor, you chisel out all the unnecessary parts from the granite block. Once you do that, once you remove those pieces, once you chisel out all those parts from the granite block, what happens? The Buddha emerges. So Buddha was already there in the granite block. You did not bring the Buddha image from outside. What you did, you removed all unnecessary parts from the granite block. And the result is Buddha emerges. If you can understand this very easily, you can think of, let us say you have a granite block in front of you, and you are a expert sculptor, and you use your instruments, your tools, you chisel out, and then you have already produced a Buddha image. It is sitting there, and on the other side there is a pile of broken cheap pieces of the granite which you have chiseled out. So if you put together, there is a granite block. If you separate, there is Buddha and the parts of granite. So that's the way to understand. So similarly, there is another kind of evolution that is taking place, and the evolution is at the level of species. You see, this evolution can take place according to, if you think of Patanjali's system, he actually believes in evolution. That's something very interesting. But evolution in a different sense. A tiny, insignificant creature that is crawling on earth, one day that creature can become a Buddha, maybe after 1,000,000 years. Why? How does it happen? There are many things to be removed, and there are many things to be obtained, added to. When that happens, he becomes an enlightened person. So once you remove, according to Vyasa's commentary and other commentators, once you remove the adharma component, there is a progress happening in your evolutionary cycle. Adharma means undesirable characteristics, thoughts, emotions, feelings, vrittis, and so on. When you have got this atharma components in large quantities, you continue to be at a lower level of creation. When you have removed those atharma components and you have already added a lot of dharma components, then you move forward in this evolutionary cycle. So that is Patanjali's view. So I can of this mutation of body and organs into those of one born in different species takes place through the filling in of their innate nature. Prakriti apura, that's meaning here. Filling in. Lot of things have to be added. You evolve in your life when nature fills all the empty places in your system. You can become an Einstein, you can become a Buddha, according to Vedantic tradition. See, there's a quotation from Vivekananda, that is the difference between an amoeba and a Buddha. Buddha here means the enlightened spiritual person in that sense. The difference between an amoeba and a Buddha is one of degrees, not of kind. What does it mean? An amoeba also can one day become a Buddha if you accept this particular sutra. The sutra is Jatindra Parinamaha. That means this mutation or evolution of body and organs into those of one born in different species. That is Jatyendra, different species. How does it happen? Through filling in, through filling the gaps, which is done by Prakriti. That is the idea I mean. Here Prakriti refers not to Mula Prakriti but to Asmita and elements. When a lot of things are added, there is an evolution forward. When a lot of positive things are removed, there is an evolution backward. Having said this, I should go back to the previous one. Now in the Bhagavata Purana, Lord Krishna gives a general instruction on these kind of yoga practices. So according to him, one may make use of mantra, aushadha, and tapa and all these methods and means to achieve special skills. But one should remember that is not the highest goal. He says, Keji dekamimam dhiraha sukalpam vayasisthiram vidhaya vividobhayehi atha yujjandi siddhaye. Now he says, one should not practice, one should not undergo extreme kinds of yoga disciplines just for achieving these siddhis. That is an important thing to remember. You know why the Bhagavata verses are very important to understand the correct place that we must give to this particular sutra. Means mantra, that is janma, mantra, tapa, aushadha and so on. All these can be used to develop special skills for mind and body, but that kind of effort to produce extreme skills for body and mind is not desirable for the highest spiritual aspirant, spiritual seeker. That is what Lord Krishna says. If you go on practicing all these, well, you may become physically healthy, you may live for a long time, but these skills do not take you 1 inch beyond the empirical plane, and it cannot take you beyond the physical plane. Again, Lord Krishna says, Nahitat kusiladrityam tadayaso hi aparthadaha andavatva sharirasya phalaseva vanaspatehi. The essence is simple. It means these yoga practices meant only for extreme skills or special powers for body and mind and intellect. They are not desirable for the highest spiritual seekers. They are not to be taken as the highest way of practicing spirituality. So that important verse is frequently quoted by traditional yoga teachers in India, in many places. Of course, not in, maybe Bhagavata Purana will not be quoted by many of the yoga teachers, even those who teach Yoga Sutras. But in the traditional schools, they teach after this first sutra, they normally teach these things. After this, we can find the third sutra. The sutra is very famous. I already explained the essence of it. Nimittam aprayojagam prakritinam varana bhedastu tadap kshetrigavad. This is the sutra. Nimittam. Nimittam here means a cause or dharma, which are the important nimittas, important causes, components that decide our evolution backward and forward. Actually, they themselves do not help you in this evolution, but they only remove the obstacles that stand in the way of our further progress. So that's an important thing. Affects the samskaras acts only as agents for removing obstacles. They themselves do not play a very important role in creating things. That's an important thing to remember. When obstacles are removed, things begin to manifest. So we normally link the two and we say the removal of obstacles produced it. Remove the obstacles, do not produce it. What is already there, it manifested of itself. In fact, this particular sutra can be said to be the essence of Vivekananda's own definitions of education and religion. You see, when Swami Vivekananda was a deep student of yoga, Patanjali yoga system. So you can find two definitions are there. One is education is the manifestation of perfection already in man. That is the definition with regard to education. Man means all human beings. Education is the manifestation of perfection already in all of us. And religion is defined as religion is the manifestation of divinity already in man. I mean, divinity is already there. You practice values, disciplines, spiritual disciplines, then what happens? The obstacles that stand in the way of manifestation of this divinity which is already there, those obstacles are removed. And when those obstacles are removed, the divinity already within us begins to manifest. Patanjali never uses analogies or comparisons, very rarely. The sutras are very brief. But in this sutra, he uses one analogy with a kshetrigavad. That means kshetrigavad. Like a person who is trying to irrigate the field. Kshetra can mean a field. So, like a farmer breaking down the barrier. Varana bhedastu. There is an obstacle. There is that much of earth or soil. It should be removed. When it is removed, immediately the water begins to flow from the stream to the field, and the field is irrigated. Like that, there are skills in all of us. We can achieve, we can obtain whatever we want. We can decide whatever we want. It doesn't mean that we will achieve immediately. Some people can become like Buddha maybe after 1 million years. That means roughly around 70 million. 1 million life cycles means 70 or 80 million years, so to speak. One can still, but I am giving the extreme example to show that there is the potency is there. The difference is only difference in degrees, not difference in kind. So, kshetrigavad, that means like a farmer who is trying to achieve the goal of removing the barrier, that is the earth or the soil that remains on that spot. He removes them and becomes a canal, and the water flows from the stream to the field. That's the idea behind. So this is one thing. And the next sutra is Nirmana Chittanya Asmita Matrat. Now the point is, all these mental structures are all made by asmitas. Everything comes from asmita. We will take this sutra next slide. Before we go further, I want to give an outline of the entire third chapters, because unless we keep that in mind, many of the ideas in the Kaivalyapada will not become clear, because we will conclude the session, because Kaivalyapada will not take much time for us to complete. So we should remember, in essence, Patanjali Yoga Sutras as a text contain nearly 195 sutras. There is a version which again depends upon the splitting of one particular sutra, which according to which they say 196 sutras, but 195 sutras, divided into 4 chapters. The standard printed work is available, in which the first chapter is Samadhipada, second one is Sadhanapada, third one is Vibhudipada, and the fourth one is always Kaivalyapada. And we discussed some sutras of Samadhipada. That's because the first 14 sutras of Samadhipada contain definitions and fundamental doctrines of yoga, system of philosophy, and yoga system of psychology. So we finished the first 14 sutras of Samadhipada. And then we actually began the text by taking an elaborate description of all the sutras in Sadhanapada. Sadhana means practice. Sadhana means practice. So, and Samadhi means concentration. So in the order of how it happens to a practitioner of yoga, the first chapter should be always Sadhanapada, because the first thing you do is practice. And the second should be the results that come as a result of practice. And the third chapter is Samadhipada, concentration, which again, the result of taking proper attitude to the consequences of powers which are produced by practices, and then ultimately the fourth chapter, Kaivalyapada. So the beginning of the text in Samadhipada is, first of all, Atha Yoga Chitta Anushasanam, when we take to yoga. Atha means now onwards, from henceforth. When do we take to yoga? Commentators sometimes would tell you, especially those who are of a devotional bent of mind, like Vijnana Bhikshu. This Vijnana Bhikshu is different from the Vijnana Bhikshu associated with Mahayana Buddhism. That we have to keep in mind. This Vijnana Bhikshu was a great devotee and also yoga interpreter. So Vijnana Bhikshu added a lot of bhakti ideas, devotional ideas into his commentary. Of course, Vyasa's commentary is the fundamental commentary. Normally we take it as the fundamental authority. So according to him, any person who finds a need to look beyond the everyday experiences of his life, when he analyzes and when he thinks of the pains and pleasures, the happiness and unhappiness, the good and bad, the highs and downs in his life, he wants to think of something that goes beyond this empirical world, or the world of empirical experiences. Then he turns his attention to something higher and transcendental. That is the essence of the word Atha. So, literally it means now onwards, henceforth. That's the meaning. So, the implication is, a person takes to spiritual life in a broader perspective. A person takes to contemplative life, where he takes to philosophical speculation, when he turns his attention away from the everyday experiences of empirical life, when he wants to think of the fundamental meaning and purpose of his life and existence. That's the meaning of Atha Yoga Anushasana. When you reach that level of self-analysis and judgment, you are fit to take to spiritual life. So yoga here should be interpreted as taking to higher life. Of course, with specific reference to this particular sutra, it can be a reference to yoga, study of Yoga Sutras, but in a more universal sense, it means to spiritual life. And then yoga is defined, yoga chitta vritti nirodhaka. Yoga is nothing but transcending, going beyond vrittis. So what are vrittis are described in the next few sutras later. Vrittaya panchadaya, klishta klishtaha, like that. There are two types of vrittis, and then he says pramana vibere vikalpa nidra smurdeka. What are vrittis? Vrittis are nothing but the resulting effects or consequences, the residual material that is left in our mental system after we have experienced something, after we have done something, or after something is done to us, after we have experienced something externally or internally. All these experiences will leave one residual element in the mental system called chittam in yoga vocabulary, and that remains there, and it becomes a strong tendency, an impulse, an aptitude or an attitude, and it goes on influencing our mind either to repeat that experience or to avoid it, depending upon whether experience is good or bad, happy or unhappy. And that is explained again in the beginning of the Sadhanapada, that is when Patanjali defines kleshas, avidya, smita, raga, dvesha, abhinivesha. Raga, dvesha, abhinivesha. These are the three kleshas which actually determine our vrittis and vasanas and samskaras. And the vrittis are defined and described belonging to 5 categories. First of all, there are vrittis which are the result of a direct empirical experience involving mind and the senses of perception. There are vrittis which are just the result of hearing a word without an object, or maybe false perception can produce vrittis. Sleeping experience can produce vrittis. Memories can produce vrittis, and so on. Now, later on, Patanjali makes an analysis, of course Vyasa's commentary to be more specific, of the mental system, how the normal vrittis function, and depending upon the structure of the vrittis of the mental system, we can understand where does a man stand and what actually produces conflicts in his mind. So it mentioned, Kshipram, like that Patanjali goes on explaining. So there is kinds of vrittis which is called dull or abnormal. There are some vrittis, and according to the formation, the structure of those vrittis, a person can remain in a state of restlessness. But normal human beings belong to a state called Vikshipta state. So, Kshipram and Mudam state are a bit abnormal. The third state is more common, Vikshipta state. When we want to do certain things and we are not able to do those things which we want to do. So there's a conflict between what we want to do and what we are able to do eventually. And that is the characteristic of a normal human beings. That's what everyone undergoes, and according to Patanjali's commentators, they are the right persons to study Yoga Sutra, because they will understand why they are facing this conflict between what they want to do and what their mind eventually allows them to do. According to modern students of, especially Western students of Patanjali system, the signal contributions of Patanjali system are twofold. One is the analysis of human mind according to Kshiptam Mudam Vikshiptam Ekagram Niruddham, which actually is the contribution of Vyasa, the great commentator. And the next important contribution is the concept of Samskaras. This is a unique concept which is now accepted by modern psychologists, most of the mainstream psychologists. There is such a thing as Samskaras, which they often use this Sanskrit term itself in many of the important books. Samskaras are things that we cannot fully understand, but we experience. The results of vrittis, the results of previous experiences, the results of previous actions, desires, impulses, and so on, which actually constitute our real character. I mean, the man behind the physical person. What are we behind and beyond the physical body of mind? What is my true personality? A personality at a physical level is only a gross dimension of the true person. But there is a subtle, invisible dimension with the real personality, which is actually the result of is a constituent of these samskaras in different formations, according to Vyasa, the great commentator. So, and of course, at one point in the Sadhanapada, Patanjali says every person should try to give a promotion, an elevation, a refinement to his samskaras that will help him eventually to experience what he calls chitta prasada. And he recommends different methods of interaction with people so that our mind is never disturbed, our mind is always kept in a state of equilibrium and peace and happiness. For that, he recommends Maitri, Karuna, Mudita, Upeksha. It's all we discussed elaborately, so I'm not going through this. And then later, in Samadhipada, we described different stages of Samapatti, called Samadhi, Samprajnata Yoga. And also, at the end of it, we explained that the Ridhampara Prajna, this higher intuitive wisdom, is the ultimate result of all these practices of dharana, which eventually take you to different stages of samapatti or samadhi. And ultimately, when you even go beyond that, samprajnata yoga, or the last stage of samapatti, or ridhambara prajna samskara, then you reach the nirbija samadhi, which is the ultimate goal, which is what Patanjali talks about when he says yogaha chitta vritti nirodhaka, which means nirbija samadhi, that we already concluded in these just now a few minutes ago when we discussed the 51st sutra of Samadhipada, which is the last sutra. And then we discussed this sutra here. That's again, one may ask this question, after you have had the best of food, then somebody offers you some kind of appetizer. How do you feel about it? Actually, Patanjali concludes Samadhipada with a reference and description of Nirbija Samadhi. That's the last, that's the ultimate. And then in the Kaivalyapada, he is not talking about Kaivalya at the beginning. He is talking about physical and intellectual skills. So I already mentioned this, he is talking about these different skills. That is Janma, Aushadhi, Mantra, Tapa, Samadhijaga, Siddhaka. He is talking about Siddhis, which we already exhausted in the Vibhudipada itself. But there is a purpose behind. The purpose is to be seen in the third sutra. Why? Because all skills are the results of one important factor, that is removal of obstacles. And in the only sutra in which Patanjali has used as analogy, a comparison, he uses the word Kshetrikavad, means as a farmer who is trying to irrigate a field, who is cutting a canal maybe from a lake or perhaps a stream to irrigate his field, he removes the soil from that part of the earth. It means he has removed that, and then the result is a canal, and water flows from the stream to the field. Like that, when we practice the yoga disciplines, what we are doing, we are actually helping ourselves to manifest what we actually are. We are not becoming something, we are actually helping ourselves to manifest our true nature. So I give this example of Buddha and the granite block. There is no better example you can think of. A granite block, if you have a granite block in front of you, if you are a sculptor, you are a specialist, you may produce a wonderful statue of Buddha. And if somebody comes later on, he will find a statue on one side and a lot of chiseled out parts of the granite block on the other side, a pile of it. Formerly, maybe 1 year ago, he saw only granite block. Now he sees two things. One is a Buddha image, a statue, and a pile of these chiseled out pieces of granite. Now they together constituted the granite block. When they separated, Buddha image came out. Similarly, when we separate from ourselves these prakriti elements, I mean the foreign bodies from our own system, all these raga, dvesha, abhiniveshas, wrong impulses and feelings, and wrong memories and samskaras, when we remove all that, then yoga chitta vritti nirodha. All these vrittis are chiseled out and thrown away. The result is the Buddha image. When we happen that, then we understand we are actually Purusha and not Prakriti. So this is how we progress this far, and we will continue with the remaining sutras of Kaivalyapada in the next session. Now you can, most welcome, you are welcome to ask questions. Most welcome.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Thank you.
I see a couple of questions from viewers online.
Yeah, most welcome.
One from Facebook.
Yeah.
I'll read it verbatim.
Yeah.
Swamiji, where can we find the mantras that Patanjali recommends for chanting to strengthen the human mind?
Patanjali doesn't recommend any specific mantras. So, if you read the commentators like Vijnana Bhikshu and some other commentators, Vyasa also doesn't mention anything. But different teachers will make Om is one frequently recommended mantra. In Buddhist tradition, Mahayana Buddhists who are practitioners of Yoga Sutra, especially Yoga system, they used to practice Om, or they used to practice Buddha, the Sharanatrayam, Buddham Sharanam Gacchami, or some other, they used to chant different mantras. In different countries, in their own language, they used to chant mantras. Or you can say, most of the mantras of Hindu tradition attributed to or addressed to different deities, like Lakshmi, Stotra, or said that there are many dhyana stotras devoted to Kali, Lakshmi, Saraswati, and so on, Shiva, Vishnu, and so on. All these are stotras that can be used. But one important point, as a mantra, remember, one important thing to remember mantra is, you should repeat the same mantra, then only that mantra becomes potent. This is an important thing to remember. Suppose a person goes on taking things from YouTube and go on chanting all kind of elaborate things, it doesn't become a mantra. A mantra should be internalized and should be chanted with concentration, with meaning, and eventually when we reach a point, we will go beyond the physical, the gross aspect of mantra. So there's an evolution in this. And remember, this is not recommended by Patanjali. You have to remember, Patanjali was not an atheist, but I would say he was not a conventional believer in God as many of us in today's world. He did not deny God, he accepted God, but the point is, he doesn't recommend any kind of traditional religious practices. Ishar Pranidhana Dva is used as a separate sutra, and Ishar Pranidhana is used in the definition of Kriya Yoga. Tapaswadhyaya Ishara Pranidhananani Kriya Yoga in the also. So, surrender to God, devotion to God, dedication to God, all these are important, and that can be practiced by any person depending upon his own or her own religious tradition. Every religious tradition has its own sacred word symbols that can be used. But important point is, this is an important which I am going to mention now. Para, Pashyandi, Madhyama, Vaikhari. This is the evolution of mantra. Vaikhari is the first stage. When you hear what you are chanting loudly, the external, the verbal dimension, is Vaikhari. That's what we do. That's how we begin. Chanting verbally. We will hear our own voice and others will hear. Next stage is Madhyama. When we go beyond that, then perhaps we may chant not loudly, but we'll be still muttering. It means it becomes more intense, becomes more subtle. There is an evolution from gross to subtle. Pashyanti, the third stage, when it becomes more internalized. Para is the highest state when you become identified with the Ishta, with the Devata, or with the deity, or with the essence of the mantra you are uttering. These are 4 stages. Now, this mantra japa, most of the commentators give example of Omkara, Pranava. That's an important thing to remember. Actually, in the commentators of Tapaswa, Desha, Pranidhanani, Kriya Yoga, there also they use Swadhyaya is often defined as repetition of Omkara, Pranava, traditional commentators sometimes. But in a broader sense, it could mean reciting a word symbol every day as far as possible at a specified time, in a specified number, with great attention and dedication. And that will actually produce certain results. Mind can become calm and quiet. And we feel a kind of inner movement within our own heart. So Patanjali, remember, Patanjali doesn't recommend any mantra. That should be kept in mind. Yeah.
Thank you, Maharaj. There is a question from one of the Zoomers, and I know that Mark may wish to ask his question held over from Friday, but there are 2 more questions that have been lingering on YouTube.
Yeah.
And Shashi has asked me to ask those questions.
Yeah.
The first has some obvious urgency. I am getting lots of suicidal thoughts. Feels like what this life is all about, and better to die.
That is absolutely wrong. So, first of all, we should know, life has a lot of possibilities, lot of potentials. We can, where we stand right now, from there, if we start our journey, we can reach whatever we want to achieve. And remember, life is not just one chance. Life is a continuing flow, actually. Actually, disappointment, depression. These 2 things have absolutely no relevance in life. Life is and should be always positive. It's an important thing to remember. Life has a meaning, a lot of potential, a lot of possibilities. We can make a wonderful example of our own life. Only we should take a very positive attitude. It's a very important thing to remember. Life is sacred, and it is a sacred gift from God. Even if you don't believe in God, there are people who cannot believe in God. Still, you think of a man like Buddha. He lived for 80 years. And how many greater persons can you imagine in the history of the world greater than Buddha? A man who did not go to a temple, a man who did not worship a deity, a man who did not ask you to recommend one book to read or one ritual to practice. And this man, he is called the light of the world, actually. So imagine one Sanskrit sentence. So, life has got a great purpose, a great potential, a lot of great possibilities. We should take a very positive, healthy attitude towards our life. That's very, very important. These thoughts can arise, but those thoughts can be neutralized, can be fought off by bringing the great examples of great men and women who had lived in this world, who also reached a point, they felt like they were falling over a precipice, but came back and took a different perspective to their own life and achieved great things, made themselves great. There are many, many people you find, people who felt that they were actually looking down over a precipice, thought of falling over. They turned back and then the sky was the limit. There are any number of examples you can find. So that's what Patanjali would have replied. Life has a lot of positive. Not only that, we can start our journey backward, evolve ourselves and become something great and sublime, going beyond the human dimension. That's what Patanjali says. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Very, very inspiring and compassionate. Thank you very much for that. Vignesh, the question online preceded my seeing your hand, so I'll go ahead and ask that. And thanks for your patience.
Yeah.
Once we know that we are Purusha, how do we get to know the unity of Purusha in all beings and things according to Patanjali?
Once we know
that we are Purusha, how do we get to know the unity of Purusha?
Oh, Purusha. Purusha. Yeah. Okay. I can answer this from two perspectives. First of all, Purusha are manifold, not one. That's one thing. Secondly, when we actually start our journey in that direction, when we take the first few steps, this question will not be there. I mentioned this earlier, in spiritual life, the question that we frequently ask before traveling some distance, those questions will not be there when we travel some distance. This is a very important thing to remember. So, what I would look like when I get samadhi? In fact, that concern will not be there when you reach not far, but close to that stage. The moment you start practicing yamas and niyamas itself, what happens? You become absolutely contented. Santosha is one of the niyamas actually. It's one of the niyamas. Any person who practices yamas and niyamas will reach a point he will find a new positive meaning to life actually. That's what Patanjali says. Santosha actually, it's not just joy. It is a sense of deep fulfillment, deep meaning of life, and a joy in identifying ourselves with this deeper meaning and relevance of our own life. This applies to the previous question also. Yoga is opening a big world in front of us. You may not be able to believe in anything. You may not be able to accept anything. You may feel like rejecting everything, but you cannot reject your own need to experience contentment and happiness and joy. And that's what yoga is offering. This is special relevance to the previous questionnaire. This is a very, very important thing. I'm very happy that they put me this question. Because Patanjali is opening and he says, you should be able to experience the santosha, a sense of inner fulfillment, inner joy. Actually, how wonderful it is to feel when no, I understand my life has a deeper meaning. My life has got a higher possibility. And that is a much greater gift and achievement than the news you may read in newspaper, suddenly you have become a billionaire. Because that can disappear one day. But this deeper inner contentment, it doesn't disappear. It fills our heart, makes our life meaningful and relevant. It gives a new relevance to our life. Okay, thank you. Yeah.
Vignesh? Here you are.
Yeah.
Maharaj, so you were talking about Samadhi today, so I wanted to know, and you've also mentioned in the past that the yoga system is a dualistic system, right?
Yeah.
So, what is there a difference in Samadhi as described by the yoga system and by the system of Dvaita Vedanta, which is also a dualistic system, but it's a Vedantic system?
Yeah, you Advaita Vedanta, wonderful. Now I tell you, Shankaracharya is said to have written a commentary, a sub-commentary to Vyasa's commentary. It's called Vivarana, it is called. And very well appreciated now. It is the same Adi Shankaracharya who is the exponent of Advaita Vedanta wrote this Vivarana actually. The Munitrayam, the three sages whom you remember in the yoga tradition, Stuve Patanjalim Vyasam Shankaram Cha Munitrayam Kartru Sutrasya Bhashisya Krama Vivaranasya. Vivaranagara is Shankara. Okay, now coming to the question. The Nirbija Samadhi that Patanjali refers to in the 51st Sutra of Samadhipada, that will make you completely fit for Jnana Prapti. But it is not Jnana Prapti itself. That is an important thing. So Shankaracharya accepts yoga as a sublime method to achieve the highest degree of fitness to understand and experience the teachings of Vedanta. But it itself is not the highest achievement, because there is still that Prakriti Purusha Bheda. There is still dualism in it. So this is an important thing, remember. So yoga will help you to reach what he called Chitta Shuddhi or Sattva Shuddhi. These are two terms, same thing. Chitta Shuddhi means purification of mind. This is the language of Advaitins. So once you reach the Chitta Shuddhi, then you will reach this Jnana Prapti, and that leads to moksha. Karma Nishthayaha Chitta Shuddhi Dvarena Purushartha Heduttam Na Swatantrena Jnana Nishtadu Swatantrena Purushartha Heduhu Anyan Apeksha. This is the statement from Shankara Bhashyas. It means Karma Nishtha, this kind of what we mentioned in the sadhana pada beginning, is a kriya yoga and devotion and disinterested actions without any selfish purpose or motive. That will take you a long distance, and such a person will naturally be endowed with yamas and niyamas, and once he reaches that point, you have a natural tendency to practice this sthira sukham asana and breath self-restraint and dharana, dhyana, etc. So why? Because you have created a lot of spiritual energy by disinterested actions, karma yoga, karma nishtha. And when you reach the samadhi level, you reach a point the next step, and you are not going to move away from it. You cannot move away from it. Once you reach Nirbija Samadhi, even if you want to become a normal, ordinary, worldly person, you cannot. Then you have to go ahead. See, you are entered. You have, the flight is already on its way to your destination, and you are sure that flight is not going to fail. Then it is as good as you reach the destination. But really, you are not yet reached, but it is as good as you reached. So you reach the highest degree of fitness. Once you reach the highest degree of fitness, from there it's not a long distance to the purpose. That's the idea behind, to the supreme goal. That's the idea behind. Yeah.
Thanks, Maharaj.
Yeah, thank you.
Mark, are you ready to circle back with the question from Friday night?
Yeah.
Actually, pranam, Swamiji.
Yeah, namaskar. Yeah.
Actually, Maharaj answered my question this morning, and what he told me was, this was verse 22 from the 9th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita.
Yeah, oh yeah.
He said that he who is devoted to the Lord will procure for him whatever he needs,
Yeah.
and he will also make sure that he keeps whatever he acquires.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah. In fact, I shall explain again. You're right. You're absolutely right. But I come to again. The verse is the 9th chapter, 22nd verse, and it is the most important verse for devotees of Gita, especially those who look upon Gita as a book of devotion. That is, Ananya Chintayanto Mam Yejana Paryupasade Tesham Nityabhiyuktanam Yogakshemam Vahamyakam. The verse contains a promise from God. What is the promise? I shall look after your yoga and kshema. Yoga means, suppose you don't have money, or you don't have a home, you want to build a home. That is yoga, apraptasya prapanam. You will be able to build a home. I am giving you an example. So what you are looking for, what you are achieving, what you are lacking right now, which you want to procure, obtain, that will come to you. That is yoga. But the next stage, you have to preserve it. Actually, all human energies, all human endeavors, all human efforts are directed in these two directions. Yoga and kshema. You want to obtain certain things, and we want to obtain certain things that we already obtained. Nothing else. If you take any human, there is no human effort other than this. And Lord Krishna says that you don't have to worry. So those who are supremely devoted and dedicated to God, and at that state of being dedicated can take different forms. You may be completely surrendered like Saint Teresa of Avila, or some of the devotees like Surdas or Tulsidas or Tyagaraja, the great musicians. It can be that kind of surrender. Or maybe you are a person who are by nature very unselfish. Your only goal in life is to do whatever is possible for you to help others. You may not even go to a temple. Like a man like Gandhi was a staunch Hindu, but didn't visit temples the way we do. That is also one way of, and he is considered to be a great yogi. That is one way of devotion. So it has a very wonderful meaning and relevance going beyond the conventional definitions of religion or piety. So such a person will not have to worry about his own problems. His problems will be taken care of by God. Now, that is a good deal actually. Because many of our problems, they pester our mind. They make us anxious and fatigued and exhausted frequently. Every day new problems are coming. The point is, when a person follows the discipline, what happens? He will be equipped with a new tool. And what's a new tool? He will have a new way of looking at his own problems. He'll have a new perspective towards life. And he will start looking at his own problems from a different angle. Then he'll think, oh, it's not a problem at all. So that new attitude, that sublime spiritual attitude, is the gift that you get when you take to this life of dedication. That's the idea behind. So that's an important thing to remember. Thank you.
Swamiji,
Yeah.
I like to study these aphorisms, Patanjali's aphorisms before our class, but sometimes I get lost as to where exactly we are. Now, is my understanding correct that we've just finished the first chapter on concentration,
Yeah.
and now we're beginning the fourth chapter on Kavalya or independence?
You are right. In your book, concentration means samadhi pada. In real life, that is third stage. Because we begin to practice something, then the results, and after that concentration, and finally as a result of the samadhi concentration, we get kaivalya, liberation, your independence in some chapter. So this is true. You are right. So right now, in many of your printed versions of the book, we have finished the 51st sutra number 51 of the first chapter in your printed book, it is concentration. And now we have started the first and second sutras of fourth chapter. That it may be called kaivalya in English, it may be called independence or liberation, and so on. Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Can you say where we are today, like which aphorisms you covered
Yeah.
today? And then
So
we'll start next
you
week.
can say we finished, we discussed the first 3 sutras of the chapter on liberation or independence. Fourth one, that is fourth chapter. We finished the first 3 sutras of fourth chapter today.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Thank you. So thank you for those questions. Most welcome. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Tat Sat Sri Ramakrishnaarpanamastu. Thank you.
Recording stopped.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Thank you, all of you. Thank you, Namaskar, for the
Thank you,
questions
Maharaj.
especially. And Bobby especially, who guided the students. Thank you so much. It's a great service.
Thank you very
much. Thank you, Bobby.
Thank you. Yeah.